DeFi, Decentralized Borrowing and Lending, coming to the XRP Ledger. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know what to think after watching this. We think about a traditional DeFi system. I don't have to go through any credit checks. Anyone has access to it. You take your collateral, you put it up, and you can draw your loan. And then you got to make your payments back. You charge interest. It all just happens on the protocol level. That's typically what we think of for DeFi. We have this presentation here by Vito from RippleX, and I think he does a great job, by the way. He really describes everything coming with these updates. I suggest you watch the whole video because I'm kind of jumping to the chase. I'm going to play for you the section where he describes the way DeFi works on the XRP Ledger. And I want your opinion because I have to be careful here. I shouldn't be too negative just because something is wildly different. That's what we want, people to create new systems and new avenues to adoption. And again, I think this is a fascinating presentation here by this gentleman from RippleX. I'll link the full presentation down below. I suggest you watch it. But let me play this. We'll discuss, and then I'll give you my thoughts, what I think, and I want to hear from you what you think. So here we go.
So like Jazzy mentioned, the XRP Ledger native lending protocol is bringing fixed-term, interest-accruing loans. They are uncollateralized, and they rely on off-chain underwriting and risk management. However, to protect the investors, to give them some kind of a insurance policy, the protocol also introduces on-chain first loss capital protection scheme. Who are the players? At the very core, we have the pool delegate. A pool delegate is controlled by one or more on-chain accounts. And first and foremost, they are responsible for creating, updating, and deleting the lending pool. Once the lending pool is on-chain, then the pool delegate can start attracting the liquidity providers. They may attract the liquidity providers through very favorable interest rates or very favorable capital protection scheme. It is up to the pool delegate how to do this. The protocol is not prescriptive. Once the liquidity providers are attracted, their responsibility is to deposit liquidity into the pool. With the liquidity on the pool, the borrowers then can come and ask for a loan. Here the pool delegate is also involved. The pool delegate is responsible for underwriting the loan, in other words, figuring out the terms of the loan with the borrower, managing the loan once it's created, and defaulting a loan in case the borrower is unable to pay the loan. Of course, all protocols in DeFi require incentives, and the lending protocol is no exception.
Okay, so this is what I'm having a hard time with. We have decentralized finance, but a big part of it requires centralized lending standards. So you have to go in under underwriting. They're going to have to check you, or are you qualified for this loan? Possibly you have to put up some real world collateral they could go after, maybe your house, your car, whatever it might be. Maybe you don't need to put up any collateral. But all that stuff is kind of like traditional. So I'm looking at this going, wow, this is nothing like what we see typically within DeFi. But, you have stuff like the lending club where, the platform, decides if someone is fit for a loan or not, puts it up, and then people can participate and put their money in to earn interest back. And, maybe you can have something like this where it's this kind of hybrid between the traditional world and the blockchain world. And I think with the right UI, you might be able to get some traction with this. And maybe it's not even going to be that type of thing. Maybe it would just be big institutions, and would they be incentivized to sign up for this? I'm definitely not saying this won't work. I could see this being an unused feature, maybe one that just Ripple uses. I know they give out loans to some of their customers for liquidity needs. It's interesting. It piques my interest. It concerns me a little bit because it's missing a lot of components of much of the DeFi out there. But, I guess you don't just want to totally copy and have an exact duplicate of what everyone else is doing, and you probably can't do that anyway because you don't have smart contracts. So they have a novel and interesting system here. It's just not fully DeFi, I guess. It's some kind of mixture of the two worlds. And, I'm interested in what you think. Real world underwriting, all your traditional stuff, and just putting part of this process on chain. But it would allow other people to partake in the process and earn interest on the value they're putting into that liquidity pool. Like, it kind of makes some sense here. I see where he's going. I like what he's got cooking here. I'm just going to be interested to see how this plays out, and can they onboard people, and how many various entities or individuals actually use this.
Starting from the borrower, the incentive of the borrower is that they get access to on-chain liquidity. For the liquidity providers, the incentive is that every single payment made by the borrower is composed of a principal amount that was borrowed plus interest. And this interest goes back to the liquidity providers, and each liquidity provider receives a share based on the initial amount that they deposited, that they contributed to the loan. The pool delegate, for all of their hard work and the risk they are taking, receives various fees from the borrower. So this starts from fees such as credit origination fee for creating the loan, service fees, payment fees, late fees, and all sorts of other not hidden fees. So how does one go about actually creating the loan? So the process is fairly straightforward. Off the chain, the borrower and the pool delegate agree on the loan terms, perform creditworthiness checks, due diligence, and anything else that the pool delegate deems necessary to determine that this borrower is legitimate. They are not a big risk. Of course,
one area this may be successful is in markets where maybe the loans people are taking aren't high enough for traditional lenders to want to service. Someone needs to take out a $500 loan to start a business. Probably Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they're probably not issuing those loans out, right? But it could open up capital to those markets, so maybe that's an area where you could get inroads. People there could draft up those loans, do all the due diligence, and you might have some outside investors that want some access to that to maybe get a little bit of more interest back and earnings on their capital. And when you spread that across a bunch of small loans, maybe actually your return would be pretty good. I guess there's a lot of areas where this kind of hybrid approach might work. It's just jarring because it is so much different than what we traditionally would think would be DeFi, I think.
Again, the lending protocol is not prescriptive. The pool delegate might choose not to do anything. However, with the loan terms agreed, they are captured in an on-chain object called a loan. But this does not capture the legal agreement. This simply captures things such as the interest rate, the payment period, the late fees, and other necessary information to compute the loan. Once a loan is created, the borrower and the pool delegate together sign a transaction called loan create and send this to XRP Ledger. It is very important that this transaction is signed by both parties. If the transaction would be only signed, for example, just by the borrower, well, this would enable the borrower creating the loan without the agreement from the pool delegate. Of course, vice versa also holds. So if the pool delegate could create the loan object without the borrower's agreement, well, now the borrower is suddenly in debt without his consent. So that's why it's very important that this is a multi-signature transaction. Once the terms are saved on chain, then the borrower can start drawing down from the funds and paying back the loan. So what is the life cycle of the loan? Well, at the very beginning, we have the start. So this is day 0 of the loan. If everything goes well, the borrower can start making regular payments that are calculated, where the payment schedule is calculated using traditional amortization function that comes from the lending world outside, or they can make a single one-off payment paying off the entire loan with some early payment fees. Now, the less happy path is when the borrower begins missing the payment. So far, everything is okay. The borrower can make a late payment, which contains everything that was due up to the missed payment point, plus any additional accrued interest, and as always, late payment fees. Once this payment is made, the loan goes back to its original state and business continues as usual. Unfortunately, if the borrower continues missing the payment, after a certain grace period passes, the pool delegate is now in the position to default the loan. Once the loan is defaulted, it is done. The borrower is no longer able to make any payments against the loan, and this triggers the first loss capital liquidation scheme. How does that look like? So in the nomenclature of the pool, of the lending pool, this is called a pool delegate cover. It is a first loss capital to safeguard the liquidity providers. And it is a configurable percentage of the value of the pool, of the lending pool. So for example, if the pool delegate creates a lending pool with a 50,000 USDC cap, and they configure that their pool delegate is 50%, it means that the pool delegate has to deposit 25,000 into the pool as insurance. Once a loan is defaulted, a configurable percentage of that deposited capital is then liquidated and returned to the liquidity providers to cover the losses. Again, the lending protocol is not prescriptive. It is up to the pool delegate to decide how much first loss capital they are willing to deposit and how much of their first loss capital they are willing to use to protect the liquidity providers. So for example, if the pool delegate chooses to provide zero first loss capital, it means that the liquidity providers are bearing all of the risk for the borrower.
So you have some optionality here on, for the liquidity providers, they could have some insurance back up there. And the better the terms, the more likely people are going to want to invest in your liquidity pool, I guess. I'll link it down below. I suggest you watch it in its entirety. There's a question and answers after this. Check it out. It's wildly different than anything we see traditionally here. Does that mean it can't work? No. I could, again, see this as being some functionality that's put out there and no one uses it other than Ripple. If it's packaged right, you have the right kind of partners in the real world kind of using it, I think it could be successful and you could see some traction here. So to me, jury's still out. Again, I like traditional DeFi. I'd like to put up my XRP and get some Ripple stable dollars back and pay back that loan over time and, do some of that regular stuff. And that's not this, at least from day one. He does have a roadmap, or maybe there's some collateralized ability there down the road. I'm not sure, but, we'll see this develop. It's good that they're working through this. We're getting some advanced feature sets. I'm not totally sold on this idea, this iteration of DeFi and the XRP Ledger, but it's one of these things we'll have to see it play out. When regular DeFi came out, I said, who's going to use that? Very, very popular. So again, it's one of those things we'll have to see launch, scale, and can you get people on board? But I'm curious on what your opinion of this is. Is this something that's going to get traction or not? As always, please like, please subscribe. The revolution will be televised right here on Jungle Link.